7 months of a shutdown in Nigeria. Of course, a lot of Nigerian locals were able to still access Twitter via VPNs, but this had a huge impact on businesses.
Yes, it did, and on just ordinary folks who use Twitter for whether it's information, for news, or for just communicating with folks. So yes, this was a huge ban that, ironically, considering the reason the ban was instituted, caused an outcry regarding freedom of speech. And of course, the Nigerian government was saying, yeah, but what about the freedom of speech of our president?
Yeah, that's it's actually a little bit funny because you take the freedom of speech of the whole country away as a result of a deleted tweet. Now, I want to go through some of the reasons why the Twitter ban was lifted in Nigeria, and one of them is because Twitter agreed to pay local taxes and to register in the country. Now, my question is this, Jan: had President Buhari's tweet not been deleted, would they have even been asked to do this?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The Nigerian government used this situation to negotiate a whole host of benefits for them compared to everywhere else where Twitter operates. Yeah, so Twitter now has to be registered in Nigeria. They need to have a designated representative in country, and then they need to comply with tax obligations. And they need to now have the same kind of direct communications between their government officials and Twitter to manage prohibited content that violates Twitter's community rules, so that presumably something that happened last year, June, July, with President Buhari's tweet doesn't happen again. And then they had one other nebulous demand, which was act with a respectful acknowledgement of Nigerian laws. So it's not yet been made official, and it's not been made absolutely clear which of these demands Twitter acceded to. But the belief from sources inside the country is that Twitter has basically agreed to everything. And yes, had it not been for the deleted tweet, then none of this would have been negotiated.
If you look at other countries, do they operate Twitter that is in a similar manner in other countries at all? Are they forced to respectfully acknowledge the country's rule of law?
I think that social media companies like Twitter, they have like standard PR boilerplate where they say they do, right? So they would say that they acknowledge and abide by local laws of every country that they operate in. Except that usually where countries might be less in favor of freedom of speech or more suppressive of freedom of speech, that's the one thing that Twitter would kick against. So yeah, it would say that nothing much has changed. It's always try to be respectful of local laws.
Could this just be an attempt by the Nigerian government to contain challenges against this law?
That and get a big multinational, a big American tech company to pay taxes locally. And then, of course, not run into a situation where the president, it's embarrassing to have your president's tweets deleted and to have him sanctioned, right? He was kicked off Twitter for 12 hours. And so to avoid a situation like that in future.
I mean, and that's, the thing. It feels like some of these punishments that have been handed out to Twitter is as a result of the embarrassment. It's almost like, the Nigerian government are trying to discipline Twitter at this stage more than anything else.
Yes, it does, and it seems like Nigeria knew exactly, what they had in their hand. I honestly, this was a surprising outcome, but the Nigerian government obviously knew that they had a lot of weight on their side in these negotiations, and were just willing to wait it out, despite the economic damage a 7-month ban would do. So eventually they knew that Twitter would exceed.
And what do they stand to gain? I mean, you mentioned that obviously it's a large American multinational that will be now paying taxes in Nigeria, but exactly how much does first of all, the Nigerian government stand to gain by this, but also for Twitter to be strong-armed in this sense? I mean, it must mean that there's a lot of money that they were losing out from the Nigerian economy as a result.
Yeah, I don't know that Twitter would, give the same kind of grace to South Africa if we were to come with a set of demands like this. But the Nigerian economy is huge, and Nigeria itself is a massive country and a massive area for growth for companies. And so I think this goes some way to show what kind of interest Twitter has in a country like Nigeria, and how much power Nigeria wields as a result. Especially considering, the nature of the tweet in question here, where the President Buhari was certainly alluding to, like a pogrom, in the civil war where like a group of people were targeted. People have been kicked off of Twitter for a lot less, and they weren't presidents. So, Twitter historically has given a lot of leeway to official people in official capacities, especially heads of state. Former U.S. President Donald Trump comes to mind, where only after years and years and years of arguably violating Twitter's rules did he eventually get banned off the platform.
The blackout was based on allegations that it was being used to undermine Nigeria's corporate existence through spreading fake news that could potentially violate consequences. But this all happened again after the tweet of President Buhari was deleted. Is there any indication that Twitter was part of this, was being used to undermine Nigeria's corporate existence?
No, I don't. That just sounds like an allegation kind of thrown in there to give weight to the government's claims. But once again, it's difficult to. This is, from an outsider looking in, and listening to the protesters and the people from inside Nigeria complaining about the ban. Certainly doesn't seem to be the case, but geopolitics is complicated. Who knows what the Nigerian government is dealing with in there with separatists, and what effect the deletion of the president's tweet might have. One has to be quite an expert in Nigerian politics to understand the full ramifications of this.
I know one of the requests that you did mention, of course, is a direct line of communication between the Twitter officials and Nigerian officials regarding prohibited content within, that violates Twitter community laws. This almost feels like a way for Nigeria to say, before you delete the president's tweet next time, first give us a ring.
Yes, and I think of concern to folks who are saying this is a huge concern for freedom of speech, is that, what about the inverse? So when the government picks up the phone and says, hey, delete that, we don't like that being on Twitter in Nigeria, so get rid of it, please.
Absolutely. Will we see maybe President Buhari's Twitter account allow more than 280 characters? Will he have some sort of special, Twitter account as a result now, perhaps?
I don't know, but additional features that would be nice for all of us, perhaps. Or at least being able to edit our tweets would already be a step in the right direction. But no, nothing like that. But certainly, I think special protections. I don't think Twitter would like to sit around the negotiating table with Nigeria again. Who knows what they'll have to give up.
Jan, my money is on seeing that edited button next to President Buhari's Twitter feed before anyone else in the world, by the way it's going at the moment. Thank you so much for your time. That is my editor at large, editor at large at MyBroadband. That is Jan Vermeulen.